Okay, so from like last 9 weeks, if you had a table, you swap your x and y values. So if I had a table with x and y with -1, 0, 1, and 2, and 3, 5, -2, 7. To do the inverse of it, the x's become y's and y's become x's. So my new x values are 3, 5, -2, and 7. And the new y values are -1, 0, 1, and 2. If I was going to graph the inverses, it is reflecting over y is equal to x. So it's going to reflect over the x-axis. I'm going to use 2 different colors so that you can see. So that would be my initial f of x. And then when I go to reflect it, it rotates and reflects f of inverse. All right, for the equations aspect of inverses, there are 4 steps. The first step is to replace f of x with y. The second step is to swap x and y. The third step is to solve for y. And the last step is to replace y with the inverse of f of x. All right, the example for this is f of x is equal to 3x plus 1. So the first step is to replace f of x with y. So it becomes y is equal to 3x plus 1. Thank you. And then step 2 is to swap x and y. So it becomes x is equal to 3y plus 1. Then step 3 is to solve for y. So I'm going to do that over here off to the side. What is the first step to get y by itself? -1. So I have x minus 1 is equal to 3y. And then how do I get the y by itself? Yes. So normally you would divide by 3. To make your life easier and less complicated moving forward, I want you to multiply it by the fraction, by the reciprocal. So it'd be 1 over 3. So now I have 1/3 times x minus 1 is equal to y. And for right now, we can leave it like this. You would distribute this out to where it becomes 1/3 x minus 1/3. But for right now, this is fine. And once you have that, the final step is to replace the y with the inverse of f of x. So we have the inverse of f of x is equal to 1/3 times x minus 1. So all of this up here should have been a review from the first 9 weeks when we covered inverses. It's not anything new that you haven't seen. There are 3 examples for the inverses of square roots. They are kind of long. I'm going to leave about a half a page space for each of them. So the first one is f of x is equal to the square root of x minus 1. What is the first thing I have to do?
Replace f of x with y.
Replace f of x with y, so it becomes y is equal to the square root of x minus 1. Then step 2 is to swap x and y, so it becomes x is equal to the square root of y minus 1. Then step 3 is solve for y. I'm going to come over here and do it. Before we can do or deal with this one, we have to take care of the square root. What's the opposite of a square root? A square. So I'm going to square both sides. So now I have x squared is equal to y minus 1. Then how do I get y by itself?
Add 1.
Add 1. So I have x squared plus 1 is equal to y. So y is equal to x squared plus 1. And then the last step, what am I going to do?
Replace the f negative 1x with negative 1.
Replace the y with the inverse of x. So f of the inverse of x is equal to x squared plus 1. That would be your answer. Something else that we have to talk about real fast with this is restricted domain. How this works is out here where we would usually have a plus or minus a number tells us where we are restricted to. In this case, there's nothing, so we assume that it's a 0. So we're going to have x is greater than or equal to 0. Something else that I want to point out is the starting point is the opposite of what is inside, like we talked about last week. So it's going to be 1, and then the outside is 0 because there's nothing. So that's the starting point of the graph. So if I was going to graph this, it would start right here at 1, 0 and go up and out. All right, so your domain, what is your smallest x value? 1. What's your biggest x value?
Infinity.
Infinity. And then for your range, what is your smallest range value? 0. What's your biggest range value? Infinity. This is the only one I'm going to do the graph for, and then the domain and range for. The rest of them, we're just going to be solving them out and restricted domain. Am I good to flip? No? All right, example 2 is f of x is equal to the square root of x plus 3 minus 5. So my first step is to do what?
Replace it with y.
Replace it with y, so it becomes y is equal to the square root of x plus 3 minus 5. Step 2 is to swap places, so it becomes x equals the square root of y plus 3 minus 5. Step 3 is to get y by itself, so I'm going to come over here and work it out. So before you deal with the square root and what's in it, you have to deal with what's on the outside. We have a minus 5. How do I get it to the other side?
Plus 5.
Add 5. So I have x plus 5 is equal to the square root of y plus 3.
And then square.
And then now we can square it. So now we have x plus 5 squared and then y plus 3. This x plus 5 squared means x plus 5 times x plus 5. So once you get to this point, you have to do the box method or FOIL. This should happen on every occasion, or I'm not going to say every occasion, but 99% of the occasions, you will end up FOILing when there's numbers outside of the square root sign. So I'm going to have x and 5, x and 5. X times x is 5 times x is, and then 5x again. 5 times 5 is 25. So I combine my x's together, so I'm left with x squared plus 10x plus 25. I know. Alright, so this becomes x squared plus 10x plus 25 is equal to y plus 3. What's the last step to get y by itself?
Minus 3.
Subtract 3. X squared plus 10x plus 22 is equal to y. So y equals x squared plus 10x plus 22. And then the last step is to replace y with the inverse of f of x. So I'm going to have the inverse of f of x is equal to x squared plus 10x plus 22. Your restricted domain we have this negative 5 outside of the square root sign. So our restricted domain is going to be x is greater than or equal to negative 5. All right, the first thing we have to do is replace f of x with y. So it becomes y is equal to negative 2 times the square root of x plus 2 minus 6. Then we replace y with x. They swap places. So x is equal to negative 2 square root times y plus 2 minus 6. Then for step 3, I'm going to come out here and work it out. So x is equal to negative 2 square root of y plus 2 minus 6. What's the first step to get over to the x?
Minus 6.
I mean plus 6.
Yeah.
Plus 6. So x plus 6 is equal to negative 2 square roots of y plus 2. Then how do I get rid of this minus 2?
Add it.
Negative 2, sorry.
Divide. Wait.
So like how I said on the front, I don't want you to divide because it's probably going to mess you up. I want you to multiply by the reciprocal. So we're going to multiply by negative 1/2 on both sides.
So why a negative?
Because it's still a negative.
Oh.
So it's all we're doing is flipping it to a fraction.